Alright, so when you think of Korean food, I'm sure things like short ribs, pork belly, barbecue beef all come to mind. But in fact, one of the most popular proteins in Korean cooking is actually tofu. And yes, I could tell you to go to the store and buy a block of tofu, but if you're a regular viewer of mine, you know that's not how I do things. So today I'm going to show you how to make an easy tofu at home. Now, I actually came up with this recipe about a year ago in partnership with Vancouver Island Sea Salt Company after coming across their Nigari product. So because of this, I won't have exact measurements in the description, but I'll leave a link to my recipe on their website, along with a link to grab a bottle of your own. And while you're at it, leave a like and consider subscribing so you never miss any new modern Korean recipes. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. And with all that being said, let's make some tofu. Making tofu is a pretty simple process, but it does require a few ingredients and some gadgets. Obviously, the most important being soybeans. You can find these at most health food stores and pretty much any Asian grocer. They're pretty cheap too. The second thing you'll need is a tofu mold with muslin cloth. I got this off of Amazon for fairly cheap. I'll leave a link in the description. I haven't tried making it without a mold, but I'm sure there's a way you could do it with some cheesecloth and a loaf pan, as long as you find a way to allow the water to drain. To be honest though, the mold will just make your life easier. You'll also need a heavy bottom pot, preferably cast iron. To be fair though, get one of these if you can anyway. They're honestly one of the best kitchen items you could possibly own. We're gonna need a blender too, unless you're more of a traditionalist and would rather stone grind your beans, but you do you. The last thing is helpful but not necessary, and that's a deep fry thermometer. We need the soybeans to reach a certain temperature, but you could probably just eyeball it. So the first thing we'll need to do is soak the beans in water overnight, which I've already done. You can see just how much they've bloated and doubled in size. Tofu making is a two-step process, and the first step is making fresh soy milk. So the first thing we'll be doing is pureeing the beans with a couple cups of the soaking water. Start on low just to get them going, then crank her up to full and get it as smooth as possible. You can add more water if needed. Set a large heavy bottom pot on medium-high heat and bring the remaining soaking liquid minus 1 cup to just below a boil. Then slowly pour in the soybean puree. Use the remaining 1 cup of soaking liquid to rinse out the blender so as to not lose any of the puree. Give it a good stir to ensure everything is mixed, then simmer on low for 5 to 10 minutes. Periodically give it a stir to prevent burning. Then allow the mixture to cool for 10 minutes before the next step. Set up a pot or container with a colander, then line it with the muslin cloth. I'm doubling the recipe just to get a thicker block of tofu, so I need something that will hold around 16 cups of liquid. Carefully ladle the hot liquid into the colander to start extracting the soy milk. Using the back of the ladle, push down lightly into the beans at the bottom to force the liquid through the muslin cloth. Then tie the ends of the cloth together and squeeze out as much of the soy milk as possible. You want to be firm with this, but don't go too hard or you'll tear the muslin cloth. I learned that the hard way. The leftover soybean pulp is called okara in Japan and can be used in soups, stews, stir fries, and also makes a good protein shake, so you can definitely keep this if you want. Now that we have fresh made soy milk, we can start making the tofu. Clean the pot and return it to medium-high heat. We need the liquid to reach a temperature of around 170 degrees Fahrenheit or 76 degrees Celsius. This is where the thermometer comes in handy. If you don't have one, just make sure the liquid is scalding and never comes to a boil. So what exactly is nigari? Nigari is an all-natural byproduct of the salt extraction process and is essentially a brine consisting primarily of magnesium chloride. This is what will coagulate the soy milk. You can also use nigari to make fresh cheeses like ricotta or even add it to fermented foods like sauerkraut and sourdough. Once the soy milk has reached the target temperature, take half of the nigari and while stirring in a figure-8 motion, slowly add the first half. Continue stirring for 30 seconds. You won't notice much of a change at first, so don't worry. Turn off the heat and let it sit covered with a lid for 10 minutes. By now, you can see that the soy milk has started to curdle and is separating from the whey. Repeat the same process as before, stirring in a figure-8 motion while adding the remainder of the nigari. Then cover and let sit for 10 more minutes. By this point, the soybean curd will have completely separated from the whey. Place the tofu mold in a baking dish and line it with the muslin cloth. If you get it a little wet first, it will stick to the insides of the mold. Then, a little bit at a time, start ladling in the liquid. Almost immediately, you'll notice clear liquid pooling out the bottom as the muslin cloth filters it out. Periodically empty the whey from the baking dish to allow more to come out of the mold. Keep doing this until all of the liquid has been passed through the mold. You'll be left with a thick but still runny soybean slurry. Then carefully fold over each side of the muslin cloth and place the lid on top. Press down lightly to get rid of any air bubbles inside of the tofu. Then place a weight on top and leave in the fridge for 12 hours for soft tofu and at least 24 hours for firm. Remove the lid and unwrap the muslin cloth. Even though the tofu is fairly solid, you still want to be gentle when taking it out. I find it best to kinda shimmy it out going from side to side. And that's it. Easy tofu at home. In the next episode, I'll show you one of my all-time favorite Korean tofu recipes. But I'm curious what your favorites are, so let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you like this episode, give it a like and consider subscribing. You can also check me out on Facebook, Instagram, and Reddit for more content.